Hey girlies, just a quick reminder before we dive into today's episode. The information shared on this podcast is intended to be general sports nutrition advice and education related to period recovery for female athletes. This is not specific to any one individual, and it may or may not apply to your situation. If you are looking for personalized guidance, be sure to apply to our RBSN Period Recovery Nutrition Coaching Program. Our 4-month period recovery program is designed to help you sustainably get your period back and keep it. You can apply now to get started in our program, and we'll leave the link for the program below. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. Hello and welcome back. This is the Eat More Carbs Podcast. We're RBSN. We're a team of dietitians and we talk every Thursday about sports nutrition for the girlies. On today's episode, we're actually answering one of the questions that Reilly gets pretty frequently asked on Instagram, which is why you're still hungry after you eat. Before we get into that though, we are going to do our high and low. So sharing just a little bit about our week, the good and the parts we wish had gone a little bit differently. Reilly, as always, can you kick us off?
This week, I'm going to start off with my high. I feel like I kind of go back and forth on if I start with my high or my low, but starting with my high this week. And my high is actually Swedish fish. You know what Swedish fish are, right?
Oh yeah.
Swedish fish might be like the hack.
Your intro fuel?
I was on a Facebook page. We know how we feel about those Facebook pages. People were like listing out, and I can't help myself. I cannot help myself. I always look at the nutrition stuff. Like I do it to pain myself. But somebody was talking about like intra-run fueling, and somebody was talking about how they use Swedish fish. And I have used Swedish fish before. I feel like I used them on my first half. So I went and I looked up Swedish fish. 5 pieces have 28 grams of carbohydrates.
Yeah, but do you have to get the big ones, not the mini ones, right?
The big ones. They're not that big though.
Yeah, like especially in comparison to how many Nerds gummy clusters you have to eat, which is like 16 or 17 to get you closer to that. I feel like less is a good thing for intrafuel.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to try maybe eating 2 every mile.
Oh, I like that.
I was trying to like look up any research on like bolus versus like continual feeding to see if there's like any benefit of taking like maybe 5 at a time or trying to take them a little bit at a time. There's actually not any clear differences on how you take your fuel, just that you get in enough carbohydrate. I'm actually really excited to try it. If I could just eat 2 Swedish fish every mile for a marathon, and that would be 10 grams of carbohydrates, I could get in 260 grams of carbohydrates.
Which like we love that idea. Okay, please keep us all updated because I am curious on how it goes. We know that like I am not coordinated enough to chew and run at the same time, but like I love that you could potentially do way less of a candy and like it be more comfortable than a gel, since we know you're not a gel girly, and it worked to fuel you the whole time.
I know. I feel like I'm the only person in America that is not a gel girly, but everybody's different. So I will report back, but I'm very excited and I had to share. I was going to share on Instagram, but I was not ready to deal with the food police and the haters. And I've been having a lot of that lately. So I was like, I will save it for the podcast.
Well, thanks for saving it.
My low is kind of related to that, I guess, but I'm like in the peak of training right now. And it's definitely taking a toll on my body. I've been definitely having some like little pains here and there, and it's really stressing me out. I know that's not a very exciting low, but it's something that I think about probably every 30 minutes.
I feel that so strongly. It's so frustrating when that happens.
Yeah. So I'm trying to just like navigate pushing myself and like trying hard, but then like recovery and rest. Always something that's challenging, I think, when you're an athlete or you're training for something.
Well, we're sending all of the positive vibes your way, that you stay healthy, because we have a very important race coming up pretty soon.
No matter what happens, I will be doing the race. Yeah.
We will do our training update at the end of this episode today to share a little bit about like Reilly's journey to running the New York City Marathon. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more about like what that training actually looks like right now.
Can't wait. How is your week going?
Good. My high is that I'm just running more. And I've shared multiple times on this podcast that I've kind of been through ups and downs with like health things and kind of stopped running as much as maybe I would like to. But now that it's a little bit cooler outside, I can run outside, which I am way more likely to do. I'm not an indoor runner. Running on a treadmill is like the bane of my existence. If I can avoid it, I will avoid it. So I will choose other things over it. So I'm excited that things are finally cooling down and I can run outside, which means I'm likely to run more, but I'm also feeling better. So we're running more, which is a good thing. My low is that even though it is nicer outside as in it's not as hot here, I am not ready mentally for the pumpkin spice that is happening right now. Most of the things that I'm seeing in the grocery store right now are like pumpkin flavored everything, which like we've done a lot of talking on pumpkin spice in the past as far as our feelings on it. So I still want my summer flavors, but I had a client yesterday that found an apple sourdough bread at Trader Joe's, and my Trader Joe's doesn't have that. So of all of the fall things that they have, they don't have that, and I'm mad. I want the apple cinnamon sourdough bread, and they don't have it.
I feel like we're moving into seasons like faster and faster. Like I feel like it's happening every single year. I went to Costco like 2 weeks ago.
Was there Christmas stuff out?
Christmas stuff. All the Halloween costumes were gone.
I was joking.
It was out. Like, and not like 2 days ago, beginning of September. Immediately when I got back from the UK, like went to do my Costco stuff, looking at potential Halloween costumes for a girl Char, tiny little rack of Halloween costumes. All of the Christmas stuff is out at the front.
Sidebar, I am so excited for Charlie's Halloween.
You will have to guess what she is.
Okay, but ridiculous that like we're moving into season so fast, and for us here it's still like in the high 90s, low hundreds, and I'm like, I just am not mentally ready to like accept that it's Christmas time.
It's really warm here too still. Like in the mornings it will be like low 60s, but like it's gonna be 85 today. Last weekend when I went for a run it was like 80 and like 90% humidity.
It's crazy. Oh,
I'm unwell.
Like I mentioned, we're talking about one of the frequently asked questions, which is why you're still hungry after you eat. Reilly, I know I'm pretty excited about this episode, and I think you are too.
I am so excited for this one. When we talked about like planning this, like I was jumping up and down because this is a good one.
It's a question that we get asked pretty frequently, not only from members of the Period Recovery Program and the Period Recovery community, but also just online in general. People will ask why they're still feeling hungry after they've just fueled. So it's something that we wanted to address in a podcast episode because the answer might be a little bit longer than you think. So Reilly, why are you still hungry after you eat?
Oh, because you're not eating the right things, because your plate isn't balanced enough and you're not eating enough. I think I'm so excited to talk about this episode and to dive into both of those topics because when I struggled a lot with fueling, my relationship to exercise, my body, when I didn't have my period, I vividly remember this type of hunger. Like I remember it so crystal clear, and I don't know why it sticks out in my mind, but I just remember being so confused on why I would eat this huge salad or this huge bowl, and then I would be like starving 45 minutes later, even though I felt like bloated or I felt full.
This is something that I think we see pretty often with athletes that come on to the RBSN Period Recovery Program, and that they do a lot of volume eating and filling their plate, so they think they should be full after they finish fueling. So are you saying that if you feel hungry after you eat, you're underfueled in that period of time?
Yes, exactly.
If you're experiencing hunger, that means that your body needs fuel. And even though we talk a lot about making sure that you are incorporating fuel throughout your day and not going long periods of time without fueling, we also want to honor hunger cues as well. If you're experiencing hunger, that's your body telling you something. That's a signal that you do not have enough of something, or maybe you didn't fuel with the proper balance of nutrients like Reilly mentioned, and we need to change something.
I think it's just so confusing because we're obviously in the era of social media, and a lot of us are plating, bowls of food. We're making different arrangements on plates so that we can post about them or share them with friends or family. And we love to see a full plate of food. We love to see it colorful, lots of different ingredients. It's confusing because we will sit down to eat one of those plates of food and then be hungry again in 30 to 45 minutes. It doesn't make sense to us that you can be eating all this food and then still be hungry later.
We feel like we should have satisfied our hunger because maybe we did have a higher volume or higher intake of fuel. Reilly, what's one of your bigger tips, or what do you typically look at as far as components that might not be balanced when someone is experiencing hunger shortly after fueling?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier volume eating, right? So eating a ton of fruits and vegetables, filling up that plate, I feel like that is the biggest red flag for me because oftentimes when we're filling the plate with lots of fruits and vegetables, we're going to be missing out on those carbohydrates, those fats, and those more satisfying nutrients. And they're satisfying because they provide energy.
I think one of the things, and I'm pretty sure you do this with your clients as well, is if we're having that happen often, or if I'm having an athlete that's struggling with adding enough carbohydrate or fat to their meal, we visually remove the color from their plate. So I'm talking with them about once they build their plate, if they were to take off all of the colorful things, all of the fruits and vegetables from their plate, what's actually left on your plate? Vitamins and minerals that are provided from the fruits and vegetables, well, yes, they're still important. They're still really essential for our body. If we were to take them off of your plate and we don't have anything else left, that's a pretty good indicator that maybe we've overdone it with our volume containing fruits and vegetables and we don't have enough carbohydrates and fats.
Some of my athletes feel really called out right now.
I talk a lot about this with athletes, and I think it's a hard conversation to have sometimes because we like to feel like we're getting in a lot of colorful things. We often want a lot of colorful things on our plate because we feel good when we have those, or we think we feel good when we have those. But you mentioned like bloating after that meal. Why does that happen?
Because you're consuming too much fiber and not enough carbohydrates.
So when you don't have enough carbohydrates and you have too much fiber, we actually bloat.
Isn't that wild? I think that's just so counterintuitive though, right? Like it's so counterintuitive, especially everything that we've heard about like gluten and bread and how these things are going to bloat you. And yeah, too much of anything is not ideal, right? We talk about all the time, and coincidentally really relevant to this podcast, but if you eat too much spinach, it's not a good thing, right? Like that has too much fiber in it. It's gonna have, oxalates in it, which are gonna block iron and calcium, right? Too much of anything is not ideal.
Too much of anything. Yes. I think that's a good reminder because we often have people that label like foods good and bad, and they'll be like, you can have unlimited amounts of the good food and then you should have none of the quote unquote bad food. And in reality, if we have too much of anything, it can cause some type of a negative effect on our body. We need balance. We need an appropriate ratio of color, carbs, protein, and fat, not just from a health perspective, but also like specific to you. What you need from your carbohydrate amount is going to be different from what I need. And that's going to be largely based on like your training load and things that are happening in your life and your body's needs. And we can't neglect any part of our essential nutrients when we're fueling.
That is such a good point. I feel like I've heard before that advice of like, you should put this much carbohydrate on your plate and this much fat, and then you can have as many fruits and vegetables as you want.
This is a good one to bring up from this perspective of like can and should, because can you put an unlimited amount of fruits and vegetables on your plate? Yes, technically you could, but should you? And then once you're sitting down to fuel, what are you starting with? If you're starting your fueling with all of your fruits and your vegetables to the point where you physically feel full and then you can't consume your carbohydrates and your proteins and your fats, so then you're like, well, I got full, so I couldn't finish my meal, and then you're hungry again 45 minutes later, maybe we should rethink that unlimited amounts of fruits and vegetables on our plate.
What we're saying right now might sound really scary to a lot of listeners because we're telling you to eat more carbohydrates, coincidentally also the name of the podcast. We're telling you to eat more carbohydrates, eat more fats, eat more energy containing nutrients, and we're telling you to cut down on your fruits and vegetables, which is likely very different than a lot of the messaging that you're seeing online. So Jenna, if somebody is maybe tuning in and hearing this information for the first time and is trying to get their period back, what are 2 to 3 small things that they can start doing now that might not be as overwhelming?
Ooh, this is a good question. I think the first one that I would recommend would be to start with something that feels approachable. A lot of times for individuals who have been used to consuming a lot of vegetables and fruits at meal times, I recommend switching to first a starchier fruit or vegetable because it still kind of falls into that category that might feel safer or more approachable, but it's going to provide the body with a little bit more energy. So moving to something like that first, if you're used to eating a giant salad for dinner without any, carbohydrate that's a grain, but maybe you have that salad with some sweet potatoes, or maybe you have that salad with some corn or peas, something like that, that is like a first step that feels more approachable if this is something that's very, very new to you. The other tip that I would have is make sure that these changes feel sustainable for you. If this is one of your first steps on working towards period recovery and having bread or pasta with your meal doesn't quite feel like something that would be sustainable for you long term, let's find an option that does. Making sure that the choices that you make are ones that you enjoy and ones that do feel sustainable for you, because we want you to sustain your intake with a higher amount of the other nutrients that your body needs. What are your tips, Reilly?
I'm aligned with what you shared. Something that I would also add would be when we're looking for some of those small swaps, see what you can do that slightly increases your energy intake. So if you're a little nervous about modifying the foods on the plate, changing the ratios, cutting out some fruits and vegetables, what can you do to some of the ingredients or nutrients on your plate already is looking at how you can maybe change certain compositions of foods without changing the ratio of your plate. I'm going to give you a quick example of this. Swapping from a 0% fat yogurt to a full fat yogurt, or swapping from a low carbohydrate tortilla to a regular carbohydrate containing tortilla. Making these small changes can help you drastically increase your energy intake or your carb or your fat intake without noticeably changing the ratio on the plate.
I love that idea of keeping the food type the same, but changing the energy that it provides for your body. Changing from a low fat or no fat yogurt to a higher milk fat percentage. Same thing with like cottage cheese. Those are great like initial steps to work on towards increasing your energy intake without really changing the type of food, which definitely can feel more approachable for athletes when they're kind of making these first steps towards increasing their energy intake. When we're talking about hunger after you eat, what's kind of the cutoff, do you think, for timing? Like if someone has a meal and then they're hungry 2 hours after, does that mean that they're still underfueled in that meal? Like what's the time range that you're kind of looking at that would maybe indicate that that meal wasn't balanced?
It really depends on the athlete. And we've talked about this a million times on this podcast. We've even joked about naming this podcast It Depends, but it really does depend on the athlete. General rule of thumb though is I would say about 45 to 60 minutes. Like if you're hungry again, if you could eat within 45 to 60 minutes, I usually recommend looking at the breakdown or the ratio of the plate. What about you? What do you think?
I generally say 45 to 60 minutes as well. If there are certain scenarios in which like you're experiencing hunger like an hour and 15 and things like that, we're still going to look at the ratio of things that are on your plate, but we also have to look at the bigger picture, just like Reilly said, as far as like when is this meal taking place? When did you train? When is your next training session? All of those things are important to look at too, but we want to make sure that like the first thing that we look at is that previous meal and whether or not it supported your body from a balanced perspective. Are there moments that you've experienced where clients or athletes will have a meal and then they'll feel hungry like immediately after? Does that mean something different?
Yeah, if you're hungry immediately after eating your meal, you definitely didn't eat enough and you need to keep eating and you need to add more nutrients into that meal.
I think that this is really common with athletes who start to decrease their amounts of fruits and vegetables that they have on their plate, but they don't necessarily increase the other components with it. So while they might be working on that decrease of some of those filling foods, they also didn't increase the other components of a plate. And so then they feel hungry almost immediately after because they no longer have the volume and they don't have the right balance of nutrients. And I think that's kind of when we feel that like immediate hunger, when I see it most often, is because we've done one of the things, but maybe we haven't fully increased the other components quite yet.
Yes. And adding on to this, I often see athletes too just have an increase in hunger in general with period recovery. And I often look at that as one of the first signs and symptoms of recovery, because as you eat more food, your metabolism is going to increase. And oftentimes too, athletes will eat similar meals throughout the day. And on a Monday, they'll eat one thing. Tuesday, they'll replicate that. And then they'll wonder why they're hungry on that Tuesday, even though they ate the same thing that they did on Monday. And this again shows that you're not eating enough, but also that recovery is happening.
What about on recovery days? Sometimes athletes report that they feel hungrier on a recovery day than they do on a training day.
I think two big things here. First off, it could mean that you're not eating enough on your training days, which I do think a lot of people are doing that, because going back to my second point, exercise is going to blunt appetite. And when you do have multiple training sessions in a day, it can be really challenging to get the amount of fuel that you need. So not only are you blunting your appetite because of the training, but you just have limited fueling periods, and it can be challenging to get the amount of nutrients and the right nutrients in those small time periods.
This is why eating to your hunger can be really, really difficult when you're working on period recovery, because just like Reilly mentioned, training can blunt your hunger. Something that Reilly's been really open about is that when she has been training for her marathon, her hunger has been decreased, but she is still working on active ways to make sure that she is having adequate fuel to support that training. So she might not be feeling as hungry as she usually would, but she's still making sure that she fuels her body, because she knows how important it is to fuel those long miles that she has and to fuel those speed sessions that she has, even if hunger doesn't actually feel the same way as it does most of the time for her. So making sure that you are consistently fueling and adequately fueling your training, even when hunger doesn't feel as present or as strong, is a super important part of period recovery, but so is looking at hunger. We have to look at both of those things, because yes, hunger is a cue in the standpoint that we need to fuel more, but we might also need to fuel in time periods that our body doesn't feel that hunger. We can't wait for that hunger to fuel when you're working on period recovery.
Yes. Additionally, too, if you are hungrier on rest days, you should take advantage of that because it shows that your body is not getting enough fuel or it needs more fuel for recovery. So this is something that I definitely wouldn't have listened to, or I would have been really stressed out about, 10 to 15 years ago, because I would have been really stressed that I was hungrier on rest days, and I would have felt like I was like ruining, air quotes for everybody, not on video, I was ruining my body comp, or I was ruining my performance because I was eating and fueling my body when I, air quote, didn't really need it, but I did need it. I do need it.
Yes, you did. Yes, you do. I think it's really important to look at both of like what our body needs and making sure that it has that, but also honoring what it wants to. So when you do feel hungry, then we have that as a clue. We have that as fueling feedback that we need to address something.
And that's why we talk a lot at RBSN about intentional fueling. And maybe we need to do a whole episode on intentional fueling. So if you are listening and you are interested in intentional fueling, let us know and we can do a full episode on that.
Before we close out today's episode, we are going to do our training update, which is something that we kind of got away from doing. Reilly and I have been sharing a little bit about our running journey. Reilly is running the New York City Marathon. I run a lot, but I'm not currently training for a race, and I'm getting back into running, but we're here to talk about like the training things that we're doing this week. Reilly, what does training look like for you this week?
This week, we're in the middle of, I feel like, peaking for a marathon. This is my first marathon, so I don't really know if this is how it's supposed to go, but I do feel like I'm increasing mileage. I have about 2 more weeks of doing that. I guess 2 or 3 more weeks, and then I taper. So T-minus 5 weeks, which is crazy. Right now, I am just running like 4 days a week. I feel like that's kind of what's best for my body. I'm doing 2 cross training days, so I just like get on the bike, and then I have 2 lifts. So some days include maybe 2 workouts. I definitely always take at least 1 recovery or 1 rest day.
What is miles per week right now for you?
I'm at like low 40s right now. So I actually have a trail race on Saturday. I'm doing a trail race that's local. Yeah, it's 18 and a half miles. It's a 30K. So I'm doing that this week. And then I have like 2 6 to 8 mile kind of runs. And then I have 1 workout day.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. A little trail run, which I'm just doing for a change of scenery and also to get some mileage with not as high elevation. We've been running up a lot of hills. She needs a break.
Understandable.
But how about you? What is this week looking like for you?
As I shared in the beginning, I am starting to run a little bit more, which has been really fun. I've been so thankful for that, but I'm taking it very, very slow because it has been a minute since I've run. So I don't want to like jump back into like typical running patterns for me, like multiple days per week. So I'm doing about 2 to 3 runs per week and then supplementing that with like a lot of cross training, a lot of weightlifting, and I'm taking it very slow. So nothing is a pace driven run. Nothing is like high mileage or anything like that. I'm running like 4 to 5 miles every time I go out at a very slow pace and just like kind of building back into it. So having a lot of grace for myself right now, knowing that like I'm not where I want to be or where I was even just a couple of months ago, but I don't need to push it. I'm not training for anything or like anticipating training for anything like super soon. So we're just taking it nice and slow.
I love that.
If you do have questions for Reilly and I, please reach out to us. You can find us online. If you do have questions about period recovery, you can always apply to be a part of the period recovery programs at RBSN. We'll make sure that we help you find the right program for you in your period recovery journey. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Eat More Carbs podcast. Please make sure you rate, subscribe, and review. And as always, remember to eat more carbs.